today we're going to try and make sense of the really deep divisions we're seeing in a city like Minneapolis. And we're going to do it using a framework from a pretty unexpected source, ancient blueprints for how to run a society. So the question is, can these old ideas actually help us solve a very modern problem? Let's dive in.
When you really get down to it, everything, and I mean everything, boils down to this one single question. This is the conflict right at the heart of the city's identity crisis. It's shaping every debate, every policy, every single conversation happening on the street. So on the one hand, you have this really strong, genuine desire for Minneapolis to be a compassionate, welcoming city for everyone. But on the other hand, you have this incredibly powerful call to restore order and, frankly, to help people feel safe again. The real problem is that these two goals are so often framed as if they're opposites, as if you have to pick one or the other. All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to really define the Minneapolis question. Then we'll jump way back in time and look at 4 ancient leadership blueprints. After that, we'll see how those combine into a surprisingly practical modern formula, and we'll wrap it all up with a powerful metaphor that, honestly, makes the whole idea just click. Okay, so what is the Minneapolis question really? Well, it goes a lot deeper than just crime statistics. It's about that invisible stuff, right? The social fabric, that feeling of trust you have with your neighbors, that sense of community, and just the basic confidence that the people in charge are, steering this ship in the right direction. So how do we even start to make sense of this tension? Well, this is where our framework gets really, really interesting. It suggests that we can use 4 ancient leadership models, almost like different pairs of glasses, to understand the forces pulling the city in completely different directions. First up is the story of Nehemiah, and his core lesson. It's simple, but it is absolutely profound. Safety isn't just a nice thing to have in a healthy community, it's the foundation. It's the starting point. Without it, you can't build anything else. You have to understand, for Nehemiah, rebuilding the city walls wasn't about shutting people out. Not at all. It was about creating order where there was just chaos. Without that basic physical structure, business couldn't happen, families couldn't feel secure, and any sense of shared identity was just impossible. The wall literally created the stable ground needed for life to start again. And here's where we see the direct translation to today. Rebuilding the walls, well, that's a metaphor for having a functional, trusted police department and a consistent rule of law. It's all about creating that same fundamental sense of security. So if Nehemiah is all about security, our second blueprint, Joseph, is about something else entirely: management. His story teaches us this crucial lesson. Compassion without a plan is just chaos. Real, effective generosity, it requires incredible discipline and some really well-thought-out system. See, Joseph's genius wasn't just that he had a big heart. It was that he had a brilliant mind for logistics. The guy built systems for everything: how to store food, how to distribute it fairly, even how to bring in newcomers. He basically proved that true mercy requires a spreadsheet. And the modern parallel here is it's so obvious. A city can say it wants to be compassionate, but that desire has to be backed up by actual capacity. Are there enough homes? Can the schools handle new students? Do social services have the bandwidth? Joseph's model is a huge warning sign that mercy without management just falls apart. Okay, our third blueprint, from Romans 13. It steps back and asks a really fundamental question. What is government even for? And the answer it gives is crystal clear. Its number one job is to create order, to restrain violence, to punish wrongdoing, and to protect the innocent. And this gets at something deeply psychological. Crime statistics might go down on paper, but if people don't feel safe walking down their own street, there's a massive gap. And when residents lose faith in the city's basic ability to maintain order, the government's moral authority just starts to crumble. So for our final blueprint, from Leviticus 19, we circle all the way back to compassion. But this time, there's a twist. It talks about hospitality, sure, but it's a very specific kind, one that comes with clear rules and mutual responsibilities. See, this version of hospitality isn't just a chaotic, unconditional free-for-all. It's built on the assumption of a community that has shared laws and shared responsibilities. And this raises a really, really tough question for any city. How do you welcome the most vulnerable people without accidentally making life even harder for the vulnerable people who already live there? So what do we have? We've got Nehemiah's safety, Joseph's management, the mandate for order from Romans 13, and the structured compassion from Leviticus. 4 totally separate pillars. So what happens when you actually put them all together? Well, that's where we get our modern formula.
And this, right here, is the most crucial insight of this entire framework. The real challenge isn't choosing between being compassionate and being orderly. The real difficult work is integrating all four of these principles into one single cohesive strategy. So here's the formula in action. And notice it's a sequence. First, you protect your citizens, like Nehemiah. Once that safety is established, you can effectively manage your resources, like Joseph. With that stability in place, you can then uphold justice consistently, like in Romans 13. And only then, on top of all that, can you sustainably show that structured compassion from Leviticus. Each step builds on the one before it. Now, to tie all of this together, the framework leaves us with one last really powerful metaphor that makes this entire vision completely unforgettable. I want you to think of a city as two things at the exact same time. It should be a harbor, a place that's open, humane, and welcoming to people who need refuge. But at the same time, it has to be a garden, a place that's ordered, that's carefully tended to, and that's protected so that everything inside of it can actually flourish. Just think about that for a second. What makes a harbor safe? It's the breakwaters, right? Those strong, orderly structures that protect it from the chaos of the open sea. Without those breakwaters, a harbor isn't a refuge. It's a shipwreck. And yep, the exact same logic applies to the garden. A beautiful garden can only grow and thrive because a fence or a wall protects it. Without those boundaries, it doesn't stay beautiful for long. It just gets trampled. Which brings us right to the final, essential takeaway of all this. Order and compassion are not enemies. They are not competing values you have to choose between. In reality, they are two pillars holding up the very same roof. In fact, you literally can't have one without the other. Each one makes the other one possible. And so we're left with this one final, provocative thought. If this ancient blueprint is right, then the real fundamental challenge for any city leader is this. How do you build the protective walls of the garden while also building the welcoming breakwaters of the harbor at the exact same time? That, right there, is the art of governance.